Welcome, everybody, to the IdeaGen's Global Leadership Summit year 2022. This is Atul, Tandon, CEO of Opportunity International, bringing to you a discussion with some of the world's leading experts. They are some of my own colleagues at Opportunity who are addressing some of the most significant SDGs. No poverty, no hunger, and education for all. So as we start the new year, to take a look back at what's been the impact of COVID on the populations that we serve, the poor around the world, and what are the solutions that lie ahead in terms of not only the challenges, but the dreams and the solutions that lie ahead to continue to build a better life for the people at the very bottom of the pyramid. But before that, a quick introduction about Opportunity itself, 50-year-old organization, a microbanking network, today with 104 partners, reaching across 30 countries, 19 million clients, and started 50 years back, 1971, one client in one city, in one country, Carlos Moreno, Cali, Colombia, with a $68 loan from our founder, Al Whitaker, who understood very well that to get a poor person to grow, to get out of poverty, what they needed was income. What they needed was a livelihood. What they needed was a job. And the most effective, stable job that they could have, illiterate and unskilled as they were, was a business, small business they were running. So Al Whitaker gives Carlos a loan, capital, and provides training and support to run his spice selling business on the streets in Colombia. From that small start, over the last 50 years, Opportunities now had 54 million loans extended, 250 million lives impacted, $12 billion loaned, tens of millions of clients to providing saving services, because simply loans is not enough. Payment systems, pioneered insurance for the poor, micro insurance. At its peak, Opportunities portfolio, 55 million insurance policies before we sold that business, if you will, to commercial operators to continue to take it to scale. And I'm proud that today the insurance companies who purchase micro insure from us, over 200 million clients around the world, still very poor, and still we are in fact one of their biggest partners and clients. In addition to that, over 8 million children being provided quality education. So not only do you look at parents for income, how do you now today provide the best shot against poverty in the future, a good quality education to poor children. So it's been that journey. It's been that journey of constantly working with our clients face to face, hand in hand, understanding their needs, coming up with solutions that they needed alongside them, not sitting in offices, but out in the streets, out in the slums, out in the yards, out in the farmhouses. And in that process, a long string of innovations, everything from trust groups to insurance, as I mentioned, to savings banks, to now agricultural finance and education finance. Tremendous progress. Whilst it's been paused for the last 2 years, the organization then took it upon itself to say, no, we will pivot. We will provide assistance simply because of COVID. Our banks will not close. Our loan machines will not fall silent. Our staff will continue to serve our clients. The result has been over the last 2 years, actually, in spite of COVID, an expanded number of clients, an expanded remit in terms of agricultural finance, more schools being financed in education. And I'm really proud to say the organization in the middle of a very, very significant move up, $100 million Waymaker campaign focused on taking us to serve the poorest of the poor in the world, and seeking to add, just in the next 3 years, coming out of probably one of the greatest recessions that poor countries have seen, 3 million more clients when it comes to our microbanking work, the 4 million more students when it comes to education finance, and 1.7 million farm families to a already very high number in the next 3 years. $100 million, very well on its way. But making all this happen, making this real, not in terms of number of dollars, but in terms of number of people, number of lives. Joining me today are three of my colleagues who are in the middle of both. The need is big, but then the solutions need to be bigger. So to talk about the need and the solutions, let's welcome three of my colleagues. Tineyi Mawocha, who heads up our microbanking work in Africa, the focus of our specific work and attention. Tim Strong, he is global head of our agricultural finance work, works in across Africa and now across the world to bring financial solutions, technical solutions, and livelihood solutions to smallholder farmers. And finally, not the least, is Andrew McCusker, our global head of education finance, who is currently leading a massive ramp up. And Andrew will talk about it. I don't want to steal his thunder in scaling the availability of quality education around the world. So welcome, Tineyi, Tim, and Andrew. And so now I think we're all set. And so, Tineyi, I'm going to start with you without much further ado, is to go into and talk to us about how the need for the people who you serve, microbanking serves, the women at the bottom of the pyramid. 98+% of our clients are women. The 98+% of them living on and surviving on somewhere between less than $3 a day. Many monies on less than $2 a day. So how has the world changed for them? How has that need become more pointed in the last couple of years? Talk to us about that.
So the need is out there, especially after the pandemic. People need to be able to survive and to thrive. So we see a great need for us to increase lending to our clients out there. Actually, right now, we have a serious demand for additional capital to be able to deploy, to lend to the people that are in need. And in particular, women who've traditionally had a bit of a disadvantage. We have been trying to help women to do interest buy downs, to do some guarantees so that they're able to lend, to borrow even without collateral. So the other need is also to grow our savings for people to be more resilient when things such as the pandemic are facing them. And the other thing that's really important is training. We do financial literacy training, we do entrepreneurship training, and this will help them in resilience should more crises occur in future. So these are really the needs, and we're crafting our solutions to be able to help these clients to be more resilient should any disaster come in future.
Thank you, Tineyi. That it is you're describing what I'll quote Dr. Antonio Guterres here. When COVID hit, this was in December 2020. I was at a conference. So what he captured. I mean, you've detailed what he had to say. This is so I quote: "Let's not fool ourselves. A vaccine cannot undo damage that will stretch across years, even decades to come. Extreme poverty is rising. The threat of famine looms. We have the biggest global recession in 8 decades. These intergenerational impacts are not due to COVID-19 alone. They're the result of long-term fragilities, inequalities, and injustices that have been exposed by the pandemic. It is time to reset." End of quote. So, Tineyi, I'm going to come to you then. So how do you reset? Your task, and I know what your task is. Opportunity is set an objective of adding 3 million clients already to the 19 million that you have and we serve today in the next 3 years. So how do we reset? What are the solutions that you're putting in place to now, actively build resilience at the bottom of the pyramid? And to make sure that these families can continue now to restart to earn incomes and earn even more in the future. What do we do? Where do we go?
Well, what we're doing is increasing access for those clients to be able to reach the financial services to begin with. So that's one of the things that we're working on. My colleagues who are in the program from agriculture finance and education finance will talk about their respective areas, but those are areas of need. My dream and my inspiration is to be able to really finance particularly women. I am reminded of one of my clients in the Mityana zone, a lady called Rose, and Rose is a farmer, but she's also a processor. And we have been financing her. We've been able to do reduced interest rate for her and also to waive collateral requirements. But what she's done in turn is to go and introduce us to hundreds of women through the International Women's Coffee Alliance. And now we've got great demand in that region for women farmers who want to increase their acreage, who want to increase their productivity, and they require funding. So I'm turning to my own principles and say, help me, I need to be able to have more capital to deploy to the clients that really need this capital.
Yeah, thank you, Tineyi. I much appreciate it. And I would really add to that is that as we now look at our clients across the world, they now have a double whammy, right? They want to restart their businesses for which they need capital. And then, we've had now loan moratoria in place for the last year and a half, 2 years. So you've got the past debt and capitalized interest. So really the need for more capital to flow into these marketplaces on terms that the clients can afford to repay. Right, I think it becomes equally important. So how do we get good capital to flow into the markets and do that rapidly, and then increasing access to that capital and increasing access to services. I couldn't agree with you more. Thank you for that. And then the training and support. Let me turn to Tim Strong next. Tim, you lead our most recent area of work, which is in working with smallholder farmers. And I described Tim's job as to how do you get, in his case, millions of farmers. His targets for on the no hunger front in the next 3 years is 1.7 million more people, farm families to be impacted. So in my thinking, his strategy is pretty straightforward, though complex to execute. How do you get a farmer to grow more, and then how do you get them to get more? Right? It's one of those situations. You got to do both. How do they grow more in terms of the crops, and how do they get more when they sell it? So livelihoods improve and quality of life improves. So Tim, over to you as you look at the challenges facing smallholder farmers. Significant challenges. How have they increased or decreased or stayed the same in the last few years? Where do you find yourself?
Yeah, thank you, Atul, and greetings to the audience as well. In terms of the need, here's what we know. With regards to agriculture, the scale of the need is absolutely tremendous, with the projected annual gap in smallholder financing sitting at roughly $200 billion a year. With regards to the Sustainable Development Goal number 1, no poverty, 80% of those still living in extreme poverty rely on farming for their livelihoods. Really, Atul, to your point, making it the last major global bastion of extreme poverty. Now, more specifically on Sustainable Development Goal number 2 of no hunger, due to the population increases, global food production will have to double by 2050. Yet the great tragedy is that farmers are still one of the most at-risk groups with regards to food security. Unfortunately, on average, small farming families still produce at only 20 to 30% of their potential yield. And all of this against statistics that smallholder farmers also represent 70% of global food production for key export crops such as coffee, cocoa, vanilla, and the list goes on. Beyond this, climate and rainfall variability is at an all-time high, with many low-income farmers being pushed to cultivate increasingly marginal lands with lower soil fertility and reduced farm resilience. And this is all, to your point, further exacerbated by the ongoing effects of the pandemic. In particular, this year, we're seeing the economic ramifications in all of our countries of operations. For example, here in Malawi, where I live, the price of farm inputs this season, which are pegged to global oil prices, have skyrocketed to 90% higher than last year's prices.
So, you face that situation. I mean, in my mind, I'm thinking of our own family. If everything doubled, across the board, the prices that we are paying for our daily services, what would that mean, and how dramatically that would change? So, how do you reset in this environment, Tim? Where do you go from here? I mean, you were a dreamer. You're an innovator. I've now seen you at work for a few years, and for all of our viewers, Tim and his family live in Lilongwe, Malawi. So Tim's not doing his work sitting, I would say, by my side in an air-conditioned office in Chicago. He's out there in Malawi. If you hear the thunder in the background, it is real. I know there's a storm happening, Tim. So how do you go from here? Where do you go? I mean, so where are the solutions?
Yeah. So we look to our clients, to the farmers for solutions and for inspiration. There's a lot of positives. We know that when farmers are linked to high quality inputs, agricultural training, accessible finance and markets, they are the most significant actors in both alleviating poverty and hunger. The World Bank estimates that investing in agriculture is shown to be 2 to 4 times more effective at poverty reduction than any other means. And for us, this is more than just a statistic, right? So take, for example, one of our lead farmers here in Malawi, Anna Chimalizeni. She lives in Tawali EPA, which is a extension area for the Ministry of Agriculture. So in addition to supporting 85 other farmers, last year she accessed a combined soy and groundnut loan, so peanuts, ended up harvesting 9 bags from a field where she had previously harvested 3 to 4 bags. She really tripled her yields. And after repaying her loan, she was able to use the remaining income to put towards the purchase of a motorbike so that she could diversify her income. So I was also thrilled to see that Anna was also using her crop residue, her soy and groundnut pods, to make compost, which she mixed with manure and used to enhance her soil fertility, really noting the challenge of input prices and how they're raising. She came up with a solution. But for us, really, the outstanding issue is that typical business models fail when they're applied to rural economies. And this really makes significant advances difficult to scale. So unfortunately, when it comes to rural services, it actually becomes more expensive in general to reach further afield. So for us, really ensuring decreasing unit economics is crucial. And the most significant and major successes in this area are demonstrated through the pairing of local leadership and modern tools. Exactly what Tineyi was saying. Really, the use of digital technology is really the game changer here. For us, we use our high-tech and high-touch digital implementation, which really allowed for a decreasing incremental cost per client served. So we've seen these costs over the last 8 years drop from $54 per farmer a year, now to $12 and reaching a trajectory of $6.80 by 2024.
But that is an 8-time reduction the reduction, Tim. So talk to you came up with your team did it was initially an idea. Now you've got thousands of these people, farm support agents, right? Local farmers, model farmers who you guys now train, equip them with tablets, load up with video training and all kinds of other soil testing and other techniques. And they're out there in a sense providing tertiary services to local farmers to get them to grow more and get more. How did that come about? And tell us a little bit about the Farm Support Agent Network.
For those of you who are agriculturalists out there or have used a tractor, many of us are familiar with what's called a PTO, a power takeoff unit on the back of a tractor. It's where you can plug in a plow, you can plug in a sprayer. It's essentially a universal device that you can put all your implements on. For us, local leaders with standardized technology and standardized training material are the same. It's really amazing for us to see the training and support and digital screening for financial services that can go on. As we're now really pushing forward our climate strategy and agenda for our program, we found this to be an incredibly easy fit to really have additionality in the work that we do. And we're thrilled by the current momentum. As we seek, as you said, to serve another 1.7 million rural people this year. And we're encouraged by our partners such as USAID, the governments of Denmark and Jersey, the European Space Agency, John Deere, Toro Foundation, and the Weber and Weekly Family Foundations, really co-investing with the farmers that we serve.
Thank you so much, Tim. Thank you so much. It really is, really encouraging to see how a combination of, high touch, high tech, local people helping each other. Ultimately, that's what we know works. We can come in with capital. We can come in with expertise. We can come in with all the training tools, but the local people have to take ownership. I call it, we can provide the kindling. They get the fire going. And I think I see that in Tineyi's work. I see that in your work of really enabling local partners and then local players, farmers, or there are, training the support staff that Tineyi has across Africa in his area. So with that, let me turn to okay, we've been speaking in some ways about the parents, right? Moms who are running small roadside stalls, selling whether it is a fruit and vegetables, or it is, in Tim's case, is single farmers, and there are many women, in fact, growing food and for their families and then selling that. Now let's turn to the children. Andrew, you've been at the forefront, your team, a vanguard really of establishing almost a new industry of affordable education. How do you expand that? So talk to us about the need, what is happening in the field as to the provision of education, quality education for children, specifically children of poor families, and where do we find ourselves?
Yeah, thanks, Atul, and hi, everyone. Effectively, from an education perspective, there's two key barriers to us achieving quality of education for all. The first one is a lack of access to education. So kids, school-age kids that should be in the classroom that are not. Now, over the last couple of decades as an industry, we've done a pretty good job of getting more kids into the classroom. But even prior to COVID, about 260 million school-age kids were not in the classroom. Now, over the last couple of years, school systems, as Atul pointed out, have been heavily impacted by COVID, as have many other industries other than just health. At the peak of the pandemic, we had about 1.3 billion school-age kids that were locked out of the classroom. The good news is that we've recovered a lot of that, but nonetheless, we still have a lot of work to do to get more of these kids back into the classroom. The second challenge is the lack of quality of education. We know that getting kids into the classroom is one thing, but providing them with a quality education is another. And where we tend to see the biggest gaps in terms of the quality of education is in lower middle income countries with which we work. And so, Atul, it's both of these challenges that we need to be addressed if we're to achieve SDG 4, which is the quality education for all.
Thank you so much, Andrew. And so what, talk to us about the solutions that you guys came up with for that and how you're seeing them advance. Even in the middle of COVID, I know your team continued to see more schools sign up and more funding go out. But now where do we go from here?
Yeah, great question. And so the lack of access and the lack of quality both need to be addressed. And through the Education Finance Program, we are addressing both of those. So on the access side, in the same way that Tineyi in the microbanking business or Tim in the agriculture business are providing private investment capital into the sector to effectively reduce the investment deficit, in the Education Finance Program, we're doing the same. And so working with a network of local lenders in markets that have a lot of kids out of school, and working with those lenders to develop education lending products that increase both the supply of schooling, i.e. loans to schools for the schools primarily used to build new classrooms, and the demand for schooling, i.e. loans to parents and students to cover tuition costs. In addition to that, so a lot working on the access issue, we have a large team working on improving the quality of education that's delivered in the schools that ultimately borrow. And so through the Education Quality Program, we provide support, which is effectively capacity building and tools to the school leaders and teachers over a 3-year period to come alongside the finance and ultimately improve both the access and quality of education. And so over the next year, we're very focused on reaching an additional 4.4 million students with each of those 3 interventions.
Extraordinary number. I mean, as I look back at what just the Opportunities Program has been able to do, Andrew, and I might not have all the numbers exactly correct, but in the last 10 years now, over 14,000 schools financed, something like in the order of 8.5 million children now in schools, placed in schools, and thousands of them getting quality improvements, management level and learning outcomes. I mean, it's quite extraordinary. But as I look to your program, the exciting thing for me really is that alongside private philanthropy, which has been the principal way, obviously, our organization funds itself, Opportunity, is the provision of public funds, the U.S. government coming in, and now I know, major foundations coming in, Elma in New York, Merck in Germany coming in, and to complement your program, where this combination of private, of lending happening from local lenders, the opportunity team providing the expertise in the middle, and then quality improvement directly to our clients. That seems to be working. You just signed a $100 million agreement with Oiko Credit for capital investment. So talk a bit about that. How are you excited to see major institutional players step into that market, and what that means?
Yeah, totally. Very excited, Atul, in that there's a lot of wide open space in this market, and we have a big job to do as an industry to get more of these 617 million kids into better school. I think you made a great point, Atul, that we can't do this alone. And so we're reliant on funding partnerships, whether that be grant funding from corporate, private, or other, government funding, as well as impact investment funding from some of our investment partners. And so very open to discussions and exploring this further, in that there is like a large amount of money that needs to be invested into low-cost schooling, into what we think is a sustainable model to get more kids into better schools. And so very excited about what 2022 will bring in terms of bringing some of those new partnerships forward.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Andrew. It is very exciting. And as I look to all three of you, what is exciting for me is really, personally, you're obviously innovators, you're dreamers. I would say I have taken great courage from watching the three of you at work, individually over the last few years, your own resilience and commitment to not only the call of the mission of opportunity to serve the poor, but your personal calls to serve the poor, to stand in the gap, which has led to, on the one hand, tremendous innovation, on the other hand, just the determination. Thank you, Tineyi, Tim, and Andrew. Thank you for it's been a really exciting time for me personally, listening to you. First, to describe, the needs or challenges, which, if left to themselves, might have caused deep depression for all of us, any of us. But then to hear you talk about, your solutions, and those solutions, I have to say, were inspirational. So thank you for that. I want to take a moment just to thank each of you personally and many of our listeners. It is, somebody once said that if you want to see real change in the world, get a small group of very committed people, join together and see them make that change happen. Well, I truly am excited and proud that I am in the middle of such a small group of very committed people. Not only my colleagues here, but all of you who are listening, joined together with a single purpose: is how do we tackle some of the most endemic problems that have bedeviled humanity and put them to bed once and for all. And the most important one, that of extreme poverty. Hand in hand with that goes with hunger. The poor people are hungry. The lack of health care, lack of education, lack of clean water, sanitation goes back to that single, if you will, root cause. There is no income, there is no livelihood, there is no capacity to pay. As a result, you've got lots of other things happening. And as I look at the world today, and I'm excited to hear even my three colleagues, in closing, what I would say to you, the most exciting goal of all that we are all focused on achieving, and I know we will together, is to end extreme poverty in our lifetimes. As global leaders, as people who today command resources, power, influence, networks, access around the world, my call to each of you is to join together hand in hand to make sure that there is no living human being on the planet within our lifetimes who goes to bed hungry. That every human being has the capacity to earn enough money to buy the food that they need to survive for the day, to provide for their families, to have a roof over their head, clean water, and education for their children. They wake up tomorrow. It's not only simply ending hunger that we can achieve, I believe, but for everyone to wake up tomorrow, the next day, to a day of dignified labor and work for which they can earn a good wage. I believe that is possible. We have seen that happen just in the last 30 years. Extreme poverty down from 2.2 billion to 700 million people, less than 700 million. Even now, as we speak, the numbers are starting to come down again. Let's continue that progress. Let's continue that focus. Let's continue that inspiration, that we can look back to our lifetimes and say we achieved what no human being has ever been able to say before. Everybody went to bed not hungry and woke up to a good day's work the next morning. Thank you. Goodbye and au revoir.